So, what is the language that is reconnective healing? Okay, good question. What kind of an energy language is it? Well, when you ask that, we get to understand that it is more than an energy language. That's what allows it, I believe, to be so coherent, so clear, so understanding. I think that's a great word to use. So understanding, so knowing. You see, the reconnective healing frequencies consist of energy, light, and information. There's an expansion beyond the energy we've had access to into these new realms of light and information, and therefore that is what brings us access to this communication. It's a language that is beyond words, and yet perfectly understood. Now, how is it perfectly understood without words or beyond words? Well, I believe I've gotten some of my insight into this from speaking with people who have had life after death or near-death experiences. One of the things that is such a common understanding that they come back with is that language does not help us communicate as we think it does. The more we master or refine words is not an enhancement to our communication. Really, when people speak about being in their near-death experience, in their life after death experience, and they look around and they see others there, they say that one look communicates volumes of information. That language may well be a challenge for us, intentionally. Words may be intentional barricades to limit the communication we can reach through them, and therefore bring us to another level at which we excel in our communication. You see, the language doesn't have limitations along the lines, for example, I'm speaking of the reconnective healing language of energy, light, and information. It doesn't have limitations such as, but you rearrange the words improperly in the sentence, so it doesn't make sense. Like the book title, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, is different with or without commas. Otherwise it means eats, shoots, and leaves. So we don't get caught up. This information, we should say, doesn't get caught up in these limitations. Can we find the right word? Our understanding is perfect. Its communication is clear. This is definitely part of the reason that when you interact with the reconnective healing language, it communicates with you in such a way that you come into a harmony with it. We always say that this intelligence knows where to go and what to do. And our bodies know how to respond because the communication is so pure and perfect. For example, let's take a different role. Let's say, for instance, if you're in the role of a reconnective healing facilitator, we learn to feel and find in a certain way, and we sort of harmonize our awareness. You see, my eyes just went up and off to my left. I don't know what it looks like on camera, but it's my left. And it's allowing me to sort of listen, in a sense, better and feel in a different way. It's almost like calibrating or coordinating a communication. It's actually changing right now the pressure in both of my ears, especially my right ear. This is a communication that is going on without words. And as we work with another person, they're receiving that communication. So whether you are the client or the facilitator, for example, there is a conversation that is perfectly understood and raises everyone's level and their vibration to a certain point of harmony where things that are out of harmony, out of balance, they simply fall away. They've got nothing to cling on to. That's cling on, not cling on, but that would be another conversation. They've got nothing to cling on to or hold on to. So a lot of the confusion, good word, a lot of the confusion in our bodies that bring about imbalance, emotional challenges, physical challenges, etc., disappears. The clarity returns. And once you know something, it's kind of hard to unknow it. Once we discover that clarity, we tend to retain it. This, I would say, has a lot to do with why the majority of people who receive Reconnective Healing, once they receive a healing from that, it tends to be lifelong. It's hard to lose the clarity again once you've gained it. Difficult to lose it. So what kind of a language is it? It's a language of energy. I love the expression, talk to me in energy. It's easier for me to understand, or something like that. I'm probably paraphrasing in a way where I'm sort of misquoting, but that's the gist of it. And yet, what is communicated is also an information. Information is communicated, and it's shared via light. Light is the way that the body heals and balances, not just the physical body. And not just healing the way we think of healing, not just getting better from something that was broken or not at its highest, but simply becoming more. So the language of reconnective healing allows us to expand and grow into more than we were before, by far. It seems to just disappears the parts of us that aren't truth. It disappears our fears. It disappears illusion. It disappears things that we hold on to because we're not quite sure where we would be without them. Sort of like like a baby's little blanket. Sometimes children hold on to their blanket until they're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 because they're not quite sure who they are without them. This language allows us to see ourselves. This is probably a part of the reason that in the communication of reconnective healing, facilitators really know enough where there's just no longer a need anywhere inside of them to do protections, because fears are not a part of who we are. There's not a need to decorate because we are so in love with our essence that we don't feel the need to add to ourselves with procedures or objects. It's really an unveiling. This language allows us to see ourselves, feel ourselves, communicate ourselves, share ourselves, and be ourselves. And in that, we discover that we are so abundantly enough. There's just nothing outside of us to reach to. So, what do we get from this language? Well, first of all, we get freedom. If the question is, what do we get from this? We get freedom. Freedom to exist as our essence. And insight and discovery of who are we as our essence. How do we feel? What do we observe? Do we observe? Do we feel? In the English language, in our sentence structure, we have subject and object. So we commonly will hear people say, well, when we step into awareness, we become the person that we are aware of and the person who is aware. Or when we step into different aspects of this, we become the seer and the scenery, the observer and the observed, the witness and the witnessed. And it all sounds really cool and encompassing, but you see, when we transcend that need, we step beyond splitting ourselves into subject and object. We stand beyond that duality, in a sense, of perception. We become seeing itself, not the seer and the scenery. We become observing, we become witnessing. That's who we are in our essence before we begin that split, before we begin that separation. This is allowing us to access unity, true unity, not the connecting of things, but the oneness of everything. And in this state, we return to our essence. We return to awareness itself. And as we exist in awareness, there is, I'm trying to find the right word, there is an ecstasy, not an ecstasy of excitement, not a feeling of an drug-induced ecstasy, not even a cognizant ecstasy. There may be the beginning of it, but the ecstasy so immediately expands into something limitless that we are no longer cognizant as awareness. Now, why am I talking about awareness? Because awareness is who and what we really are. We have manifested in physical form from awareness. We've manifested in physical form from energy. We've manifested in physical form from consciousness. I know we used to think that as physical beings we have consciousness. I know we used to think that as physical beings we emit energy. I know we used to think that awareness just meant cognizance, being cognizant of something, and that as physical beings we have awareness. But really what we understand today is that the physical matter that we are is an expression of consciousness, of awareness, of energy. It's not the other way around. And we hear a lot of people speaking this way today, far more than when we were first talking about this in Reconnective Healing, far more. And science, of course, is demonstrating it more clearly. It's not that quantum physics hadn't already been on the discovery of that, but now it's more common knowledge, let's say that. So what we get from this language is an awareness, a showing, a seeing, and we enter maybe touching on that ecstatic state, and then we return to it. Now wait a minute, if we're touching it, how do we return to it? Something has to be in the middle between touching it and returning to it. Yes, we sort of disappear, our thinking minds, we move way beyond, and we disappear into what we like to think of as awareness, just to differentiate it. I'm aware of my shirt, I'm aware of the walls around me. But in awareness, you're somewhere different if you're anywhere at all. And the only way that we know that we had entered into awareness is not so much when we're there as it is when we return. So this language is also a way shower. It's a harmonizer. It shows us a way. We enter into a space which is really sort of exiting out of a space where, see, the duality of our language, the linearity of our language doesn't really provide us the words. So we have to share the concepts. Now, here comes part of the points. So the duality of our language, the linearity or lineality of our language doesn't really give us the words. So here is where the understanding starts to make itself more clear. A lot of you are understanding and following this as far as you allow yourself to. Hey, I'm cognizant of something, I become more and more conscious, more and more aware, and suddenly I return to awareness. Where was I in between? In that gap, maybe, that was spoken about in meditation? Somewhere when we're in super awareness, awareness, we're not aware of it. We only know we were there. Once we return, we realize that we've come back from where, not sure. But if you're following this and the feeling of it, and do let us know, type in a couple of thoughts, punch in a few things in the chat. Let us know if this is making sense to you. If it is making sense to you, it's making sense to you because there's a communication non-verbally. In this field, we're sharing of energy, light, and information because I know my words are not doing this justice. And so the more we allow ourselves to understand, the more we've stopped listening to the words, the language, the sentence structure, how we put it up. Are we using the right verbs, the wrong verbs? So what does it mean to speak in energy? Well, we all speak in energy. We're just not aware of it. And what happens with reconnective healing is as we expand, we speak and hear on a much more comprehensive level. I would almost say a grander level, not judgmentally grander, but just larger. More inclusive, more comprehensive, because we've moved beyond the limitations of energy itself into light and information. So what are the limitations of energy itself? Well, you see it in different ways. You see an energy source you have to stay close with. If you move too far away from an energy source, the further away you move, the weaker the energy becomes. But, those of us who have interaction with reconnective healing and the reconnective healing spectrum of energy, light, and information have experienced firsthand that the further away we move, the stronger and more intense and more clear this field becomes. How is that? Because when energy begins to get weak, the light and the information are there functioning at a different level, and the energy isn't sourced that way. We see in a lot of energy healing approaches, there are a lot of ways you need to do it or it doesn't work. You can't move more than 3 inches away in one approach. You have to move clockwise or counterclockwise in another approach. Yet, just the opposite, once again, with reconnective healing, the more we free ourselves from those rules, the more this comes in. So what does it mean to speak in energy? It means to be who you are, who you really are, not who you desire to be, not anything in the personality thought box, the ego thought box, but it allows us to be our essence, and essentially essence to essence. We interact, we communicate, we share, and it is a perfect comprehension, a perfect light. We become light, bringing light to light. What does it mean to speak in energy? It means no thinking about it, no focus on it, no wondering if you've said it correctly or incorrectly, because what comes through is the beauty, the perfection, and the love of the communication, the love of the essence, which is you.